Hola, hola, amigas. Welcome to another episode of Modern Latina in Midlife. Thank you for being here. Today I have a really interesting conversation. We are talking about your nervous system regulation is your moneymaker, also known as superpower for your business growth and wealth. When I saw this topic, I thought this is super interesting. Being an entrepreneur, I want to know how regulating my nervous system has an effect on my business growth and wealth growth as well. So you will find that even if you are not in business for yourself, are not a business leader, are not in the C-suite type of role, that nervous system regulation is still something that can impact your own wealth growth as well as your decision making in all things in life, but especially as it comes to your money. So, without further ado, let me introduce our guest today. Corrine Phelps is a former D1 athlete who left a successful career in luxury real estate for entrepreneurship, investing, and personal development. As a renowned expert in personal transformation, Corrine is dedicated to helping individuals break free from limiting beliefs and create a life of abundance. With her qualifications as a nervous system success coach, breathwork therapist, master NLP practitioner, and clinical hypnotherapist, Corrine brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to empower you on your journey toward optimal well being and well performance. Without further ado, let's welcome Corrine Phelps. Welcome to the podcast, Corrine. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to connect with you. I've been trying to have a conversation about this topic for a while, so I'm super excited that we've connected.
I am so thrilled to be here and I can't wait to dive in.
Yes, let's do it. So, I'd like to first start with, I find that most women's journey, especially for those of us who are in the midlife stage, there's a poignant moment in life that usually leads them to the work that they do today. Is that the case for you? Or what led you to go from luxury real estate to an expert in personal development?
Wow. So it was definitely not a midlife moment, my pivot, because I was selling luxury real estate when I was in my 20s. And I love the fact that you just mentioned midlife because I'm 45. And I actually the other day was like, hold on, is 45 midlife? Am I in midlife? And I actually Googled it because I was like, when does midlife
Well, what did you
start?
find? I'm curious to hear what you find because people have a different idea of when midlife starts.
Yeah, I know. That's why I actually had to Google it. I mean, yeah, we Google everything now. So I was like, I'm going to
Yeah,
go to Google and ask
yeah,
Google,
seriously.
when does midlife start? So Google said 40. So I was like,
Yeah,
oh, I've been in it.
yeah,
And I didn't even know I was like fully in it. And I was like, but
yeah.
wait, I'm going to live till I'm like 110. So am I
Same,
really,
same.
am I really midlife?
You're right. It
Uh,
doesn't count. We've got a few more years, right? To
yeah,
get there.
I'm rolling with that. But so I was in my mid 20s when, well, not mid 20s, late 20s when I decided that real estate really wasn't for me. And I'll preface that with I got into real estate because I had my daughter really, really young. I had her in college. And while my background was in nutrition and food science, that's what I studied in college. A lot of people were telling me that I needed to, as a single mom, do something that was going to generate a lot of income and do so in a way that I could, like, have control over my schedule. And if anyone who's listening is like in
Real
real estate,
estate.
they know that choose like zero control over your schedule in terms of like you're showing clients all the time, you're working late, it's weekends, contracts. And all of that was not really conducive to having a small child. While the income I was producing was, the rest of it wasn't. And it wasn't what I had intended to do with my life. So at around 27, 28, I kind of had a breakdown. I was crying all the time, hated my job. And I was like, this is not the example I want to set for my daughter, that we have to accept doing something that we don't love in order to achieve an income level that we do desire. And that was really the catalyst for
Mm.
leaning into personal development.
Mhm.
And my entry point was in a fitness capacity. I started teaching yoga and Pilates and using nutrition
Mm.
coaching all blended together is how I started. And it's
Mhm.
evolved
Mhm.
a lot over the
Mhm.
years.
Wow, that's I love that. I love how you put that in terms of the example that we're setting for our children. I think that's so beautiful, and I think that when we can pick up on that on a young age, it's really powerful. So kudos to you and to your child for you making that switch and seeing that. So thanks for sharing that. Now, today we're talking about nervous system regulation is your moneymaker, aka superpower for business growth and wealth. Could
Yeah.
you explain what nervous system regulation is and how it becomes a superpower for your business growth and wealth creation? That's what attracted me when I read that, that was like one of your topics. I'm like, sign me up. Let's do this. So I'd love to hear about
Yeah.
that.
Well, so probably going to answer this in a couple like
Yeah.
phases.
Yeah.
So first of all, nervous system regulation is like all the rage right now, isn't it? I
Right.
mean, everywhere you turn, you're hearing it's like, oh, that feels so good for my nervous system. So I feel like there's a lot of mixed messages and confusion around nervous system and nervous system regulation. So let me preface this with our nervous system. It controls so many different things from our heart rate to our breath. It has a huge impact on how we respond to the outside world. So it's basically like a bridge between us and the outside world. So there's this aspect of it really controlling our physiology, but it also controls our thoughts. And your subconscious is part of your nervous system. So there's kind of like the mindset piece when you hear people talking
Hmm.
about your nervous system. And then there's also this like physiological piece, and they're very interconnected. And so nervous system regulation really is learning how to be the driver of your nervous system. At least this is the way that I like to talk about it. So if you think about you as like the conscious part of you being the race car driver and your nervous system kind of being the vehicle, what we want to be able to do is be in control of where we are on the highway. And so if you think of nervous system regulation as being this kind of like highway situation, we want to be able to move into a sympathetic state when we need to have our foot on the gas, right? So
Hmm.
maybe you're getting ready to walk onto a stage and present. So we want to be in a sympathetic state there. You might have think that being in sympathetic is bad, but it's absolutely not. We need to be able to be there, but we need to be able to come out of it and into that rest and digest place, which
Hmm.
is kind of when you think of like, kind of chilling on the bed or like in this place of like, I'm so like after a yoga class or something like
Hmm.
that. Um, so we want to be able to come down and into that place. And then there's another place in our nervous system that's called ventral vagal, which is actually a combination of both of those states together. And that really is when you hear people talk about flow state, that's where we are. And so that's that combination of having the energy and activation that we have in sympathetic, and then also this feeling of like, oh, I'm really at ease at the same time. So
Hmm.
think about how dropping into flow and how feeling that way might really serve you in business, that
Hmm.
particular state. But we also need to be able to have that control to step on the gas when we need to, and then
Hmm.
also when to lean back. And so those three states really translate into a lot of things, from the clarity that we bring into our business, the energy that we share with other people, whether that's team members or the clients that you're serving. And there's another piece inside of nervous system regulation that's probably the most powerful thing to regulate your nervous system is called co-regulation. So
Hmm.
your nervous system matches my nervous system. My nervous
Hmm.
system matches your nervous system.
Hmm.
And if you have you ever walked into a room and just like felt like, ooh, it's really tense in here. That's kind of like
Absolutely.
everybody's nervous systems together, or possibly one, and it might be the leader. So
Hmm.
imagine being on a sales call, how if you can bring that safe, regulated energy to a sales call and allow the other person to feel that safety, to feel that authenticity, how that might impact their
Hmm.
transformation, but also your business
Hmm.
growth, both getting them results, but then also being something that's going to expand the
Hmm.
income level of your business.
Wow. That's really cool. There's so much here. You're right. This needs to be answered in several stages. Okay, so then if we want to use this then in a way that it's going to help us grow our business, where would you guide me? Like say I'm a business owner, and I love to be able to use this as my superpower in growth and in business and wealth. How would you guide me to move to that? Like how do we start?
Mm. So if you came to me and you were somebody that was like, I need to know more about this. I want to grow my business. I want to be your client. We would start with a complete intake of me trying to figure out where you are in your nervous system, um, teach you about it, but then I would give you some strategies to basically get quick wins in the moment. And
Mhm.
some of those strategies are, so just imagine that you are getting ready to go on, whether it's a job interview, it could be a important conversation with a team member. It could also be a really big, I don't know, let's say a sales call with a potential client. And you feel some kind of way, right? You're so nervous. You can't get yourself clear at all in your head. You have butterflies in your stomach. You almost feel like maybe like you have to go to the bathroom or something before you
Mhm.
have this call. Maybe you feel like you can't even get words out. Well, that is you in a sympathetic state, but you're in a like level 10, maybe not level 10, but like eight, eight in your nervous system, meaning like you are like really stressed right now. And we need to be able to bring you down into a place where you can feel a little bit more peaceful and deliver
Mhm.
impactful message, have that conversation, and do so in a way that builds trust with the other person. So, what I would recommend for you to do in that context would be to take a few deep breaths. So, you're going to make your exhale longer than your inhale. And the
Mhm.
reason you do that is because when we're in a sympathetic state, it actually starts to like we need to discharge energy from our body, not activate ourselves more. And so I would have you do a couple breaths, like deep breath in and
Mhm.
like count on 8 to exhale, nice and slow. And from that place, then I would have you use a tool called orienting to get you in your body. And how you do that is really just using your five senses in like listening for sounds in your ear, like on both sides. Of course, you're listening to sounds in your ear, but you listen on your right side. Try to like those really small sounds that you're not aware of until you get really
Mm.
quiet and you pay attention. And then you would try that on the other side, maybe looking for two or three sounds on each side. Then looking in your air, like in your environment, looking for three objects and identifying their colors and their textures. And then I'd have you touch something, touch your computer, touch the water bottle, touch a piece of fruit, notice the temperature and the texture. And then notice how that has shifted your state and gotten you back
Mm.
into your body. And then
Mhm.
walk in to said situation and see how it turns out differently than it has in the
Mm.
past. So
Mm.
that would be to give you
So
the
it's
proof.
yeah, so it's like grounding basically, because I know I've used that. I don't know that it has different names, right? That orienteering, is that what you called it?
Orienting. Yeah.
Orienting. I've used that, and I know I've heard of that in other scenarios as well, like to help calm like anxiety, so it's kind
Yeah.
of the same thing. It's like all this like grounding, right? Like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And you
Very
could
cool.
apply that in another context when we're getting ready to make big purchases or
Mm.
invest in something. So when you're really talking about money and whether that's whether we're shopping or whether we're investing in buying something big, a car, a house, whether it is when you're literally in the grocery store and checking in with yourself, whether it's impulse spending, really staying on track with the budget,
Mm.
those sorts of things, because our purchases too can be driven from looking to soothe ourselves. And
Mm.
so if we're depending on what your money goals are, and whether
Mhm.
that's in the context of like a sales call or a spending decision, then this is a really great place to practice it too and check in with your nervous system. Like, am I making this investment from an aligned place?
Mhm.
Or is this something I'm making from a stressed place?
Mhm.
And is this really going to serve me? Is this going to support me?
Wow, that's powerful. That's really cool. So when I think of of the nervous system. Thank you for offering. Those are two, I think, really quick wins that we can use already, that we can take away and use. The long breath. I've heard of that as well. And I don't know where I learned that, but I know I've used that for a long time when we take like say, breathe in for 4, breathe out for 6 or 8, that it
Hmm.
helps us to get out of that state. So I love that. That's really powerful. Um, so thank you for sharing those. When I think of like regulating nervous system, like let's say we live in an environment where, we have teenage kids and it feels like your nervous system is always like activated. Is there more of like a long term like strategies that help more in long term to help that as opposed to like those just like really quick wins? Like how does that work? Does that come into play?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I actually it makes me think of I'm in New York City very often, and I feel like New York City can be the most dysregulating place.
Mhm.
And so, something that I have to apply when I'm here is some of these strategies. And so, from like a long-term and consistency place, the thing about nervous system regulation is it is not a destination, it is a practice.
Mm.
Just like we go to the gym or we, you know, eat well, nourish our bodies. Like
Mhm.
you don't plan to go on a diet and then end the diet and then not eat well anymore, right? If we're looking
Mhm.
to achieve a goal. So it's consistent practices and consistent check-ins throughout the day. So
Mhm.
when we're really practicing nervous system regulation, it is checking in with yourself multiple times in the day, noticing what environments tend to put you in that place. And as we start to notice what environments, interactions, people, sorts of things like that happen to have a big impact, then you can do things in preparation because there are certain things we can't avoid. So imagine you live in New York City
Mhm.
and you know that being out on the street all day long is really taxing for your nervous system. So you'd want to do a check-in and sort of prepare yourself to go into the day. And so some of
Mhm.
those things are actually things like meditation. Meditation is not something though you would practice in a dysregulated state because
Mhm.
meditation is something that would probably dysregulate you more if you're in a dysregulated state,
Hmm.
but it is setting you up for a place where you're almost like kind of putting your energetic protection suit on so that when you do go into a place where might be uh, activating,
Mhm.
it probably won't activate you in the same way because you have
Mhm.
set yourself up for success.
Mhm.
The
It's like the pre
biggest,
it's like the pre-work. Like the
yes,
meditation is
exactly.
more of like the pre-work, like that builds up over time.
Yes. And the biggest thing that you can do to support your nervous system is actually going to bed at the same time every night, getting a full 8+ hours sleep, and waking up at the same time.
Wow.
So one of the things that I use with my clients when we're working together is to as a tracker and like to really show you that things are working is heart rate variability. It is a key, like basically a KPI, key performance indicator for how stress is impacting you. And that's really what nervous system regulation is all about, is how we respond to stress. And some of those things can come from like embedded trauma that we had in childhood. So those are things that we sometimes need to flesh out and become aware of and heal and do all of the things around that. But when we're looking at what we're doing and how it's supporting us, HRV is a huge indicator. And sleep, when we don't go to bed, when you could just like go off by like 5 minutes,
Mhm.
it has more
Wow.
of an impact than you can possibly imagine. So that's number one. Number two is actually hydration, which all
Mhm.
of these things, like we don't think of them as nervous system support. We think
Right.
that we have to use like mindset things or you have to use a breath technique in order to regulate. So it's these certain things that you're really using as a baseline. And so, really, these things that we do for our health are actually direct correlation showing up in how you would respond and grow in your business
Mhm.
and really translates into our finances.
That's interesting. How does, I mean, maybe it's too difficult of an answer. I don't know, but how is like hydration? How does that affect? Is there an easy, quick way to like explain how that works, or is that
Oh
just
my
kind of
gosh, yeah, because you would think about both food and water. These are like basic core human needs. So if you are operating in a place and space where you don't have enough, your body is literally like, "Oh my gosh, I
stressed
can't
out?
deal with anything else. I'm just trying to survive,
Because those
or
are the
like maybe I
basics.
think I'm dying."
Yeah.
And so then you go into a stressful situation and you snap at someone, or you're nervous and you think that you're being nervous. It has something to do with them, but it really has everything to do with you haven't supported your baseline
Wow.
just for your body.
Yeah. Well, that totally makes sense. Like 100%. Um, yeah, that's super important. So what led you then to discover the importance of nervous system regulation and this correlation with business and wealth? Like what led you to go into in that direction?
I mean, it was really a lot of healing in my own journey that I knew that I needed to work on. And then the observation of so many of my clients when I was working more in a high performance fitness space. So with my clients, what I was noticing is that all of them were coming to me because they had specific goals around health, well-being, weight loss, performance, that sort of thing. But most of them were staying because they were stressed. And that was a part of the reason that they weren't actually achieving some of their goals. They were also staying because they enjoyed the connection, which is another huge piece of nervous system regulation. Like we
Mm,
are communal beings,
mm-hmm,
and we're actually in the midst of essentially a loneliness epidemic.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
that greatly impacts our nervous system. It greatly impacts so many different drivers in our business, how we show up.
mm-hmm.
It impacts our bottom line, our like money, whether we're growing it or we're not growing it, how we spend, all of these things. And so I started noticing these things with my clients, and I started researching what it was that I could do in order to help them get to their goals. And that's when I started learning about all these things. And I learned about nervous system more in like a performance space, but then I started to understand the impact of our nervous system on our subconscious and how it drives everything. And the real kicker and catalyst was I essentially ended up in the hospital thinking I was having a heart attack when I was about 37 years old. And it turned out it was because I was extremely burnt out, like panic
Mm-hmm.
attack level. Like, and the doctor was like, "You're not having a heart attack, but you will if you
Mm-hmm.
don't start learning how to manage your stress." And I think I'm sitting here thinking, but I teach yoga, I meditate, I do all of these things. I'm
Right.
not stressed. And I started really uncovering a lot of different things after that place and space. And I figured out or discovered that due to a lot of subconscious blocks, what was driving my spending habits, because at this point right now,
Mm.
I was earning a very high income, but I had a extremely high output. So
Mhm.
big cash flow in, but my
Mhm.
spending was even more. So I was
Mhm.
drowning in a ton of debt.
Mhm.
And all of that was driven by a multitude of things in my subconscious, which drove me to be a complete workaholic. And I hid behind work and
Mhm.
rather than dealing with
Mm.
all of the trauma. And so that was, I would say, the real big kicker when I started to understand that I was not walking the walk, that I was coaching and pushing my clients to walk.
Mhm.
And that was
Mm.
when I went into hypnosis. I found
Oh,
breath work and became this huge deep dive into understanding the nervous system in a different way.
uh-huh. This is really good. I'm like writing notes over here. If you see me, I'm like, I forgot this like envelope. Like, where's my notebook? Like, let me just grab this. I have so many notes here. You're making so many great uh points and just like bringing up so much. Um, one of those things is when you said your subconscious, right? Like you're doing yoga and you're doing all this work. Like, how can I be so stressed out? But like subconsciously, we have blocks that are creating us to look for comfort, if you will. or coping mechanisms, right? In other ways, like spending or maybe overeating or things like that. These like a couple of things that come to mind. So that was my next question. So in regulating in nervous system regulation, what are some of the things that come into play? And you mentioned hypnosis and breath work were a couple, but to like help then unblock those subconscious, like how does nervous system regulation work to or are these kind of different modalities that are used together to come to this big, nice, beautiful conclusion or better space? Like, can you expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I use hypnosis and breath work as tools to help access the subconscious, which is going to illuminate all sorts of things that are our blocks.
Oh
Like
yeah.
when we're talking about, oh, meditation and yoga, in the context of my story, I was doing all of the things, but more I was operating on a surface level, and
Hmm.
I was doing basically what you see, like the cool stuff, right? Like I was doing all the cool stuff. I was checking all the boxes. I had like a killer morning routine, a killer night routine. And it was all Instagram worthy, but it was like I literally was checking boxes. And so none of this stuff will work or impact and help you if you aren't going a little deeper, if
Hmm.
you aren't really in the belief or searching or wanting to uncover the things. And the uncovering, it's much like an onion. It just like keeps like it's never
Yep.
done.
We're
And
never
so I
done.
use those tools as an unblocking mechanism so that we can start to heal that hidden or latent trauma that we have suppressed that can be a driver of this feeling in our nervous system. We're getting stuck in our nervous system in a certain place because that's when we're super dysregulated. It typically is from a like a past pattern, right? So we get
Hmm.
stuck in that sympathetic state because we've either been operating in that place for so long. And for my instance, I was stuck in sympathetic and it was from childhood stuff.
Hmm.
And I was perpetuating staying stuck because I was working all of the time. And I
Hmm.
hid behind that as an excuse.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. You're speaking my language. I love all this. This is how I work with my clients is in, peeling off those layers and it never ends. It's just like one after another. There's always something. And I love what you said. Yoga, it's amazing. I love it. Meditation, but it is only you said it beautifully. It's surface level if you're not digging deeper, if you're not going in to really do the work, then you're just scratching the surface with those. I feel like you really need to get in there and do the ugly work because it can be ugly. That breath work, man, that brings up some stuff.
Oh
I've
yeah,
done that.
it does for
That
certain.
Yeah, that is some powerful work. Wow. So are you then certified in hypnosis and breath work and this, or do you like um work in conjunction with someone else to help people do this?
So I'm a hypnotherapist and a breathwork facilitator, as well
Mm-hmm.
as an executive coach. So I use
Mm-hmm.
all of those things all together.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm about midway through the second year of somatic experiencing.
Mm.
So that is deep trauma work and
Mm.
understanding of how that applies to all of this as well.
Oh, I love that. Can you talk about that a little bit? I feel like somatic is also becoming a big buzzword, and I'm not sure that I fully understand that. Can you explain that a little bit so that I know and then so that the audience also knows?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this somatic, I mean, breathwork is a somatic tool. It is really, it's your body, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
the stored trauma that's living in your body. It's the wisdom that is in your body as well,
Mm.
and being able to release anything that is stuck and stored, and then learning to listen to that wisdom and like tapping into that energetic field, and
Mm-hmm.
which might sound like, ooh, that's a little bit woo-woo.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but your nervous system actually is both scientific and spiritual all at the same time. And somatic work very much is too. So it's really learning
Mm-hmm.
tools, tactics, and strategies to get out of your head and into your body, which
Mhm.
is really attached to releasing trauma and anxiety. I'm, I'm sure you hear dozens of people, if not every single human you come in contact,
Mhm.
talking about how they're experiencing anxiety. And it's driven by so many different things, trauma being one of them, yes.
Mhm.
But also because of the society that we live in, the modern day world that we live in, that keeps us essentially with one foot in the past and one foot like fearing the future. And technology has a big piece of
Mhm.
that. Like the first thing we do, we wake up and look at our phones.
Mhm.
And when we are stuck with one part of us in the past and one part of us in the future, then neither part of us is really where your feet and your heart are. So like your head's in one place, your heart's in
Mhm.
another, but neither
Mhm.
one of them are where your feet are.
Mhm. Not in the present,
Hmm.
basically. So somatic work, is it physical work when you're is that a practice? Is it a physical practice or what is
So
it?
some of the tools that I've already mentioned are
Mm,
part of
okay.
somatic, so that like
Okay.
orienting into your body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Using breath work is a somatic tool.
Mm-hmm.
Moving your body in a way that's kind of not, if
Mm-hmm.
you've ever seen static dance, it's
Mm-hmm.
not some like a specifically a tool that I use, but it's kind of like letting your body move in
Mm-hmm.
ways that
Yes.
it wants to and
I
lead
love
you, sort of
that.
that intuitive guidance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so for example, I have this like recurring like back pain thing going on. And I feel like sometimes I feel like it's something like it's more of emotional almost. I feel like I don't know that. I just something tells me this is something emotional that needs to be worked on.
Mm,
If I were to come to you with something like that, is that something that could potentially be relieved through somatic work?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah,
Especially with your intuition already
yeah,
telling you it has
yeah.
something to do with emotion. And a lot of times those places that we have in our body that has like this stored up,
Mm.
tension, it gets so much more activated when we're in a highly stressed state.
That 100% makes sense. Yeah, I often feel like there's something stuck in there, like something, a trauma or a memory, that's what it feels like to me. It feels like a memory. But I
Yeah.
don't know what that memory is. It's the worst. So really then, this nervous system regulation is beneficial in influencing decision making, but really not just for business leaders and entrepreneurs, because that's kind of what like, oh, let me learn about this. But really, this applies to really anybody. Like even, I guess I was thinking, well, how can people who are not like business leaders, if you will, how could they benefit or use it, like say in the workplace
Oh
or
my gosh. I mean, it is applicable to absolutely everybody. And I guess the reason why a lot of times I talk about it in the context of entrepreneurship is because, one, I believe that entrepreneurship is the fastest crash course in self-development and growth. So it's,
100%.
it's so much stress, it's a lot of work. We are working all of the time, and we're the only ones that are generating the income. And so there's a lot of pressure. And a lot of times the physicality of like taking care of yourself can start to fall by the wayside. And you're like, I just got to work more because I got to make more. And what we really need to start doing and focusing on is this place of filling your cup first, honoring those things first, because that's what, everyone's seeking, this peace and ease and making more and doing less. Well, the only way we're really going to start to be able to do that is if you start to approach all of building your business with a body forward, health forward focus first.
Mm.
But this is certainly applicable to someone in the workplace, to a mom, to a dad. I mean, it's literally every human being needs
Mhm.
to know how to regulate and soothe their nervous system to I would say that outside of your nervous system being your moneymaker, that if everyone knew how to regulate their nervous system, it would literally change the world, like
Oh,
world peace,
100%.
right?
Like literally, I believe it. Seriously, if we all were doing that, all the leaders in this world. Can you imagine like how the impact that would have? I mean, things would run
Absolutely.
so differently.
And if
Yeah.
you kind of go back to the piece of co-regulation, if you imagine that every leader was taught that and their impact, their as a leader showing up, that everyone else's nervous system is going to match theirs, think
Hmm.
about the ripple effect there.
Wow. Wow. That's huge, right? Like it ripples, like it ripples down. Like if these are your people and they're listening to you and we're seeking you for guidance, just how amazing that ripple effect would be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, and it's from like a tangible aspect. If you think about like if you've ever been having like a terrible day and I don't know, you went into the grocery store and the grocery store clerk, as they're checking you out, were like, hey, and they looked you in the eye and they're like, how are you? And you're like, wow, you're like the first person that looked me in the eye today. You're the first person that smiled at me today. And all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden your day went from
Mm-hmm.
being feeling so awful to this moment of like, oh, like that
Mm-hmm.
is co-regulation. And the opposite side of that is
Mm-hmm.
kind of like you're driving in the car and you're going
Yeah.
along fine, and all of a sudden you maybe accidentally cut somebody off because you didn't mean to or whatever it was, and then the guy goes whizzing by you with giving you the finger or something, and you're like, oh my gosh, right?
Yeah.
And then now
It
that
throws you
ripple
off.
effect goes
Yeah.
forward because that guy was so angry and he like gave you his anger, which was coming out of his nervous system. So
Uh-huh.
both ways have a massive ripple effect, both in the positive but
Yeah.
also in a negative context.
Yeah, 100%. Wow. Yeah. That's really cool. I'm glad we're talking about this. So what are some practical tips or other exercises maybe that our listeners can use and start implementing to have better outcomes, in their businesses? Or can you share examples of like a beautiful success story that our listeners can take with them?
Yeah, actually, I'll share this is something that I'm working with a client right now whom came to me because she was feeling a tremendous amount of anxiety. And we're in, I think, session 8 or so, and we uncovered, well, two things. She came for three reasons: anxiety, her career, and then also her love life. It's three things she came for. And I started to get a hunch of what the underlying piece was. And I had no idea that she was getting ready to go and visit her father. But 2 weeks before go visit her father, we did actually a father healing session was one of the things that we did. And we uncovered a lot of things that she'd been holding on to, a lot of past trauma, a lot of things that were driving her anxiety and really impacting and blocking her in her love life. And those things were also impacting her in her career because she was playing out a dynamic with one of her bosses that was actually a direct correlation to something she was holding on to with her father. And
Mm.
I'll also preface that she was going to visit her father because her father was really, really not well.
Mhm.
And she ended up
Mhm.
going on this trip, almost canceled it because of what she had uncovered. But we kind of talked it through and she ended up going and having a tremendous conversation, multiple actually, with her father that has completely changed their relationship, like a
Mhm.
huge healing context that happened there because she was able to tell him things that she'd experienced. He had no idea that they had impacted her in that way.
Mm.
And so a
Mhm.
deep healing happened.
Mm.
And since then, she's come back. She ended up going into work. And in a few short weeks, she's actually been promoted.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
had been like talking to someone dating before that she went and had this trip with her dad. And things are progressing along in
Mhm.
a way that are so surprising to her because of past patterns that things wouldn't be working out the
Mhm.
way that they are right now.
Mhm. I love that. Thank you for sharing that story. And I find that when we do the healing work, whether it's whatever aspect of our life it is, whatever piece has us stuck in whatever it is, that it affects so many different areas of our life. It's like you said, it breaks the pattern, it blocks that subconscious, and then all of a sudden, all these things unlock. And so I am not surprised at all that
Yeah.
having that healing with you was able to have that effect on her relationship with her father, her boss, her, how she showed up, and therefore her relationship as well with the partner or her love life. That's beautiful. And that's the beauty, I think, of this work. Having said that, do you find or ever feel like your relationship with money, it almost moves in the same parallel direction with a love interest or love life?
Oh,
Do you,
absolutely. Yeah,
isn't that
they
crazy?
mirror each other for sure because of attachment styles, and they're a direct correlation to, like, if you've got money problems, I would check in with your love relationship. And if you've got problems in your love relationship,
Mm-hmm.
you probably got something going on
Mm-hmm.
in your money.
I 100% see that. I've seen that in myself, and I see that with like my clients or friends or whatever. Like I'm like, wait, this is weird how these move in a parallel direction. I don't even know what to call it, but I see them moving at the same time together, one way or another. So yeah.
Absolutely. And a lot, we don't necessarily connect them. I mean, it's all connected. I mean,
Right.
every single facet of,
Yeah.
I mean, when we're not taking care of our health, it shows
Yeah.
up in those ways too. Like, you really can't neglect a bucket. If you
Mm-hmm.
do, it's going to catch up to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. You can't neglect a bucket for sure. Yeah, seriously, I like that. Okay, so personally, like we've had this discussion for a little bit already. I feel like I'm hearing a lot more about this nervous system regulation. Why do you feel that this is gaining exposure or evolving, or why do you think is happening, that it's gaining more, I guess, interest for like business and wealth creation and the such?
Well,
Or
so
or because I'm thinking, or am I just being targeted by, like the algorithm?
yeah, well, I mean, we do tend to, on social media, we're kind of in a
Right,
silo in
right.
that way, but I think it's for a couple of reasons. Social media plays a factor in it, I think, in just sharing information in these like sort of viral
Mhm,
contexts, which can
mhm,
be good or it can be bad.
mhm,
Um, like I said, entrepreneurship is a rocket ship for growth and
mhm.
personal development. So we have a lot of people whom, especially during the COVID
Yeah.
era, left
Mhm,
jobs and started businesses.
mhm,
And so you have an influx of whether it's coaches, small businesses, all sorts of people who started doing their own thing. And I think have started to become aware of that sort of thing.
mhm,
I also think that with the conversation around trauma, which has been also for a while picking up speed, and the
mhm,
conversation of how basically we all have trauma and that there's not a distinguishing between big T and little
mhm,
t, that it's all
mhm,
trauma and that we all
mhm,
have it. And so I think that's driving it. People like the holistic psychologists who have made understanding this work
mhm,
so understandable, so relatable to
mhm,
everyone, sort of
mhm,
bringing it out from under the carpet, behind the hidden, and really bringing these things to light. That I think is something else. I
mhm,
also think that with the surgence of like breath work has really started to take a hold, be very mainstream. I mean, it is obviously
mhm,
ancient practice and been around forever.
mhm.
But about 10 years ago, it really started to become a little bit more prevalent. And then now it's what I would say hitting mainstream.
Yeah,
And so I think
yeah.
all of those things are part of it. I also think that kind of the COVID era also
Mhm,
created this space and time for people to
mhm.
do a lot
Yeah.
more introspection and to stop pretending like they were feeling okay and
Mhm,
seeking and searching for ways that they could make themselves feel better, which I think also happened because of a level of distrust with the medical field
yeah,
and the leaders
yeah.
in our, in our culture.
Yeah, 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 you make some really great points. Yeah, I agree. I think especially 2020, I feel like it brought so much for all the reasons, right? Entrepreneurship and everything that was going on. But I know for me, I have a friend who's a breathwork practitioner, and I had participated in her sessions. Well, during COVID, she made it much more accessible, and And people were open to it, like, "Oh, I got nothing to do. Why don't you come join me in this breathwork thing?" Okay, like I had friends and their mothers that were coming because nobody had anything better to do. And then it was like, wow, that was amazing. And so it was like it just brought this opportunity for people to be introduced to things that they would have otherwise not had the time to do. And then all of a sudden it just brings up this whole other thing, this whole healing part and this whole, all the things. So wow, yeah, I agree. Thank you. There were things that you said affect our nervous system. You mentioned sleep, you mentioned water, you mentioned nutrition, you mentioned connection. Are there other pieces that belong in that category?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, loud noises can really
Mm,
impact your nervous system if you're somebody who's really sensitive to
mm,
them,
mhm,
and connection, but also there's like I guess, our circle of people that we spend a lot of time with. So, yes, the connection piece, but I guess like the environment and whom we choose
mm,
to spend time with is
mhm,
also of great impact.
mhm. Yeah, I think environment, all of those are really important. But I know for me, if my home environment is not comfortable and peaceful and in the way that I like it, that to me makes me feel very dysregulated. I need to have plans. I need to have just comfortable things to lay my eyes on, something that looks nice and that looks comfortable and inviting so that when I'm done with work, especially working from home, that I know, okay, I could step into my living room and it's a very comfortable place to live
Mhm.
in. So, yeah.
And temperature has a impact too, which is a reason why cold plunges
Mm,
are all of the rage right now. They are a not something you do when you are dysregulated. It's a tool to expand the capacity of your nervous system. But
ah.
imagine how you feel when you're either in extreme cold or extreme heat. We tend to get really agitated.
Mhm. Oh, yeah. Oh,
Mhm.
wow. That's powerful. I like that. Yeah, I like cold plunges. I don't do
Yeah,
them often
they
enough.
that's like training ground for your nervous system, right? It's that expanded capacity, creating that safety. Like you can tell yourself, okay, I am safe. I am okay. I am in control. I'm not going to die here. Your body is telling you it's going to die right now because it's freezing and it's
Mhm.
really uncomfortable. And so and that's what your nervous system will also try to trick you, right? Because it wants to keep you safe. It's there to help
Mm.
you survive. And so that's why it's this training ground. It expands the
Mhm.
capacity and your ability to and resilience, which is really what nervous system regulation is all about, is
Mhm.
expanding our capacity to face stress, to be more resilient.
Mm. I love that. Very cool. Thank you. Well, do you have anything else you like to share before we part ways here? I mean, this has been so beautiful. Thank you so much. I feel like we just barely even touched the surface, which is fine because this is all about introducing the concept, right, to listeners. But anything else you'd like to leave the listeners with, or something you want to share?
Mm. Just that you know you are much stronger than you ever think that you are, that we can handle more than we think that we can. And this is how it really applies to entrepreneurship as well, is that your capacity gets to expand and grow with you. And learning how to regulate your nervous system is it's an invaluable tool.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you. So beautiful. And I have here in my notes that you are giving the listeners a free 7-day cultivate breathwork and self hypnosis for nervous system support and expansion.
Oh
Is
yeah, that almost slipped my I can't even believe I forgot about that. Yeah, I have a portal. It's basically a membership portal with all of these recordings. I mean, hypnosis is self-hypnosis, so you can use it, at your fingertips. Tons of breathwork audios for you to use for that consistency. And then inside of that membership, I also host 2 live sessions every single month. So we all meet on Zoom. You experience a live breathwork experience
Mm,
in
mm-hmm,
community co-regulation at the same
mm-hmm.
time as breathwork.
Ooh,
And yeah, you can come and join us for 7 days for free. Give it a test drive.
perfect. I love that. So I'll link that in the show notes. And tell me, what other ways can people work with you? Where can they find you? Let's tell the listeners all the good stuff.
Yeah, well, I spend a good amount of time on Instagram. I mean, not scrolling, but I am in there. I check my DMs pretty frequently. So and I share videos, different things on there. So insights. So come over, follow me, say hi, let me know that you heard this podcast because it's really
Mm-hmm.
fun to know
Mm-hmm.
where we
Yeah.
connected. And then of course my website, so
Yeah.
that's my name as well. So both my handle and my website are Corrine Phelps, and like I work together one-to-one. I do this in group contacts. I do a lot of stuff for corporate, doing like offsites and bringing this work inside of corporate
Mm,
contacts to help
mm,
leaders. And then I also do a lot of this. I come inside of masterminds and do
mm-hmm.
sessions for entrepreneurs inside of there. So
Ooh,
a host of ways. There's really
yeah.
like, yeah, all the ways.
Ooh, I love that. That's very cool. Oof, I've got all these ideas going. So very cool. Thank you so much. I will link all your stuff in the show notes as well. And thank you so much. It is not I don't lose sight of the fact that you are giving your time as well to come here and help our listeners learn more. So I really, really appreciate your time. Thank you, Corrine.
Thank you for having me. I
Yes,
so appreciate you.
yes, of course. Thank you.